The red light in the paddy. My name is Kale, and I need to tell you what happened. I need to before the memory fades into a nightmare or before the nightmare becomes my reality once more. I am a farmer, a simple man. My world used to be measured by the rising sun and the monsoon rains. Now it is measured by the coming of the dark. It began on a night like any other. I was coming back from the far fields, later than usual. The motor on my small tiller had sputtered and died, and I'd spent the better part of an hour coaxing it back to life under the disapproving gaze of the setting sun. By the time I was walking the thin, muddy dike that separated the flooded paddies, the moon was already high and full, a perfect silver coin pasted onto a black velvet sky. The air in the Cambodian countryside at night is something you can wear. It's thick and wet and heavy with the scent of life and death mixed together. That night, the sweet perfume of night-blooming jasmine from my neighbor's fence fought with the earthy rot of decaying vegetation in the stagnant water. It was a smell I knew my whole life, a smell of home. My path back to my stilt house was a thin ribbon of mud, slick and treacherous. My every step was a soft squelch, a sound immediately swallowed by the deafening chorus of 1,000 frogs. Their croaks and ribbits were the heartbeat of the night, a constant, living sound that told you everything was as it should be. It was the sound of normalcy. I was thinking of Soria, my wife. It had been a year since the fever took her, but some nights, especially when I was alone and tired like this, it felt like only yesterday. I could almost picture her waiting for me on the veranda of our house, her silhouette framed by the warm glow of the single kerosene lamp. The thought brought a familiar ache to my chest. Then it happened. The sound stopped. Not faded, not quieted, it stopped. One moment the air was vibrating with the sound of 1,000,000 tiny lives. The next there was a sudden, complete silence. It was so absolute it felt like a pressure against my eardrums, like diving too deep into the river. The world had gone deaf. Every frog, every cricket, every living thing had fallen silent in the same instant. All I could hear was the frantic pounding of my own heart and the harsh sound of my own breathing. I froze, my foot hovering over the mud. My eyes scanned the vast, silvered expanse of the rice paddies. The moonlight turned the water into a shattered mirror, reflecting the sky and the dark, distant shapes of the sugar palm trees. My village was a small cluster of sleeping lights, far to my left. To my right, nothing but endless fields. That's when I saw it. Across the water, maybe 50 meters away, a single bobbing red light appeared. It drifted just above the tops of the young rice stalks. It wasn't the warm, flickering yellow of a lantern or a torch. It was a deep, crimson light, like a hot coal, and it pulsed with a slow, unnerving rhythm. A hungry pulse. My first thought was a logical one. Bong Tom from the next plot over, maybe, checking his irrigation gates with one of those new battery-powered lamps. But why red? And why was there no sound? No splashing, no voice, no boat. It just floated, drifting with a purpose that felt ancient and wrong. I stood there paralyzed, watching it. It moved without a source. It glowed without a flame. It existed in a world that had been robbed of all sound. My mind scrambled for an explanation. Swamp gas, a reflection. But the silence, the oppressive, total silence, argued against any natural cause. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for this thing to pass. Then my gaze dropped from the light itself to its reflection in the paddy water below. My blood ran cold. The reflection was not of a lantern. Where the serene, red glow should have been mirrored in the water, there was something else entirely. Something pale and horrifyingly organic. It was a tangled, writhing mass, trailing down into the dark water like obscene roots ripped from the earth. It was white, like bleached bone, with sickening threads of pink and dark gray woven through it. It shifted and coiled on its own, a knot of intestines and veins dangling from the point of light above. I felt a surge of pure, primal terror, the kind that bypasses thought and goes straight for the spine. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The silence had stolen my voice. I took one stumbling step backward, my foot slipping on the slick mud. I caught myself, my hands slapping into the cold water, and scrambled back onto the dike, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't look back. I ran. I ran with a desperation I hadn't felt since I was a child, fleeing a striking cobra. I sprinted along the narrow path, my bare feet slapping against the wet earth, my breath tearing from my lungs in ragged gasps. I expected to feel something cold on my back, to hear a sound that didn't belong to the living world. But there was nothing. Only the crushing silence and the image of that pale, tangled reflection burned into my mind. When I reached the wooden ladder to my stilt house, I practically clawed my way up. I slammed the door, shot the heavy wooden bolt, and fell against it, shaking uncontrollably. Only then, sealed inside the familiar darkness of my home, did the sound of the world return. The frogs started their chorus again, tentatively at first, then all at once, as if a switch had been flipped. The night was normal again, but I knew it was a lie. Something was out there hunting in my fields, and it had seen me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, a heavy machete clutched in my trembling hands, my back pressed against the wall, listening. Every croak of a frog, every gust of wind rattling the palm thatch roof was the sound of it coming for me. But the night passed without another incident. The sun rose, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, and with it came a fragile sense of security. In the harsh light of day, the memory felt distant, like a fever dream. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe the grief for Soria was making my mind play tricks on me. I tried to convince myself of this as I went about my morning chores, but the fear lingered, a cold knot in my stomach. I went to check on my chickens in the coop behind the house. 2 of them were gone. There was no sign of a struggle, no feathers, no blood. The wire mesh was intact. It was as if they had simply vanished. A small, cold dread began to seep back into my veins. Later that day, my neighbor, Bong Tom, stopped by. He was a good man, older than me, with a face weathered like old leather from a lifetime under the sun. "Bong Kale," he said, his eyes avoiding mine. "You look unwell, a long night." I hesitated. How could I tell him what I saw? He would think I was mad. "The tiller broke down," I said, offering a half-truth. "I was out late." He nodded slowly, chewing on a piece of raw sugar cane. "The nights are not always safe for men to be out so late. The spirits, they own the dark." He glanced towards the paddies, a flicker of something fear in his eyes. "My wife found Esray. She said she heard nothing last night. No frogs for almost an hour. She was scared. She lit extra incense by the spirit house." My heart pounded, so it wasn't just me. The silence was real. Did you see anything?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Bong Tom's eyes finally met mine. They were wide and serious. "Some things, Bong Kale, are better left unseen. Go to the village, speak with Yi Sathya. She knows the old stories. And bolt your door tonight. Put thorns in your windows. That is all I will say." He turned and walked away without another word, leaving me standing there with his cryptic warning hanging in the humid air. Yi Sathya, grandmother Sathya. She was the oldest woman in the village, so old that nobody remembered a time when she wasn't. Her face was a beautiful map of wrinkles, her eyes cloudy with cataracts but sharp with an intelligence that saw more than the physical world. Some said she was a Krasue Khmer in her youth, a traditional healer who knew the ways of both medicine and magic. Her house was at the edge of the village, surrounded by a fence of sharpened bamboo and overflowing with pots of herbs and strange-looking roots drying in the sun. The air around it smelled of incense, camphor, and something else, something ancient, like dust and secrets. I found her sitting on a low stool, weaving a basket with gnarled, surprisingly nimble fingers. "Yi," I began, my voice trembling slightly. I bowed my head in respect. She didn't look up from her work. "The fields were loud last night, Kale, and then they were not." Her words struck me like a physical blow. She knew. "You saw it," she stated. "It wasn't a question." "I saw a light," I whispered, pulling up a small stool to sit before her. A red light, and in the water the reflection. Was not a light, she finished, her voice a dry rasp. She finally looked at me, and her cloudy eyes seemed to peer directly into my soul. It was her entrails. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Her who? You have seen a Krasue, she said, the name spoken with a chilling finality. She put down her basket and leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It is a curse, not a spirit born of death. It is a woman from our village or a nearby one. By day, she looks like anyone else, your neighbor. The woman who sells you fish at the market. She smiles, she talks, she lives a normal life. But she has made a pact with darkness, a promise for beauty or knowledge or revenge, and the price is a terrible hunger. She explained that every night the creature's head detaches from its body, pulling its stomach, its heart, and its intestines along with it. The body is left behind, hidden and sleeping, while the head flies through the night, its organs glowing with an unholy light, searching for food. It feeds on blood and filth, Sathya continued, her voice low and grim. It preys on livestock first, chickens, dogs, but that is only an appetizer. What it truly craves is the blood of pregnant women, the flesh of newborn babies. It will lick the blood from a woman after childbirth or steal the infant from its cradle. I thought of my missing chickens. I thought of the pale, tangled mass in the water. It all clicked into place with a horrifying certainty. Why me? I asked, my voice cracking. I have no wife, no child. Sathya's gaze softened with something like pity. The Krasue is drawn to life, to birth, but it is also drawn to decay, to sorrow. Your grief, Kale, it hangs around you like a shroud. It is a scent to a creature like this, a beacon in the dark. It sees your loneliness. It sees an empty house, an easy target. My blood froze, an easy target. What can I do? I pleaded. How do I fight it? You cannot kill it easily, she warned. To harm the head is only to anger it. The only way to destroy a Krasue is to find its hidden body while the head is out hunting, and to destroy it, or to prevent the head from reattaching before sunrise. If the sun touches the floating head, it will die in agony. She stood and hobbled into her dark house, returning with a small bundle of dried leaves and a string of beads carved from a dark, thorny wood. Burn this incense. It will confuse its senses. Hang these thorns above your door and your windows. The Krasue is a foul thing, but it is also vain. It fears having its precious intestines snagged or torn. A barrier of thorns can deter it. She pressed the items into my hand. Her skin was dry and cool like paper. Be careful, Kale. It knows you have seen its true face. It will be back. It will be curious. And its curiosity is a hungry thing. I left Sathya's house with my heart full of dread. Her words echoed in my mind. A woman from the village. As I walked home, I looked at every woman I passed with a new, terrifying suspicion. Was it the young woman washing clothes by the river? The old woman selling mangoes from a cart? Any one of them could be the monster that haunted my fields. The normal world had been peeled back, revealing an ugliness I could never have imagined. That night I turned my house into a fortress. I followed Sathya's instructions, hanging the thorny beads and stuffing sharp branches into every crack and window frame. I barricaded the door with a heavy table. I lit the incense, and its thick, acrid smoke filled the single room, making my eyes water. I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in a corner with my machete across my lap, watching the moon climb the sky through a gap in the wooden shutters. The night started as usual. The chorus of frogs was a comfort. Hours passed. 1 minute bled into the next. My fear began to give way to a weary exhaustion. Maybe it wouldn't come. Maybe the thorns were enough. Then, just after midnight, the silence fell again. Instantly, utterly. My breath caught in my throat. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the handle of my machete. I listened, my ears straining against the oppressive quiet. A soft, wet, dragging sound started from below the house. Shlip, shlip, shlip. It was the sound of something heavy and damp being pulled through the mud and grass. My house, like most in the countryside, was on stilts, raised 2 meters off the ground to protect against floods. The thing was now directly beneath my floorboards. I could hear it moving around, a faint, disgusting squelching sound. I imagined those pale, tangled entrails slithering through the dirt, searching. The incense smoke was thick in the air, but beneath it I could smell it. A faint, coppery scent of blood and rot, just like the night before. Then came a scratching sound, not from a claw. It was a softer, more insistent sound. The scratching of fingernails against the wooden posts that held my house up. It was trying to climb. My heart hammered against my ribs. I scrambled away from the wall, moving to the center of the room, my eyes wide in the gloom. The scratching stopped. A moment of silence passed that stretched for an eternity. Then, a soft bump against the shuttered window. I held my breath. Another bump, harder this time. Then, a scraping sound as wood slid against wood. It was trying to pry the shutters open. I could see the moonlight begin to slice through a widening crack. I had to see. I don't know why. Maybe it was a death wish. Maybe I needed to confirm the horror was real. I crept towards the window on the opposite side of the room and peered through a tiny crack in the wood. There it was, floating at the same height as my window. The red light was there, poolsing malevolently, casting a crimson glow on everything. It was the head of a woman. Her long black hair was matted with mud and filth, drifting around her like a ghostly shroud. Her face was pale and bloated, her lips drawn back in a hungry sneer, revealing teeth that were too long, too sharp. But the eyes were the worst. They were wide and black and filled with a cold, soulless intelligence. They were not the eyes of a mindless beast. They were the eyes of a calculating predator, and they were staring directly at the other window, focused on getting inside. Below her chin, the gruesome tapestry of her organs dangled, glistening wetly in the moonlight. I could see her heart, a dark, pulsating lump, beating with that same slow, hungry rhythm as the light that emanated from it. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. This was the Krasue. The monster from Yi Sathia's stories was real, and it was outside my home. Suddenly, it turned its head. Its black, empty eyes swiveled and locked directly onto the crack I was peering through. It saw me. A sound escaped its lips. It wasn't a roar or a scream. It was a wet, gurgling hiss, like air being forced through a blocked pipe. The sound of a throat that was no longer connected to lungs. It abandoned the other window and shot through the air towards mine with an unnatural speed. I yelped and threw myself backwards as its face slammed against the shutters. The whole house shook with the impact. Wood splintered. The thorns I had stuffed into the frame scraped against it, and it let out another furious, gurgling hiss. It was angry. It backed away for a moment, and then it slammed against the window again. And again. The wood was groaning, cracking under the assault. It wasn't going to hold. Panic gave me a surge of adrenaline. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, an old clay water jug, and hurled it at the window. It shattered against the wood, but the noise seemed to startle the creature. It backed off, hovering in the air a few meters from the house. It wasn't trying the window anymore. It was just watching me, its head tilted as if curious. Its lipless mouth opened, and a long, gray, prehensile tongue slithered out, tasting the air. It knew I was in here. It knew I was alone. It seemed to be enjoying my terror. The standoff continued for what felt like hours. Me, trapped inside my wooden box. It floating outside, a patient, glowing nightmare. It would drift to one side of the house, then the other, occasionally bumping against a wall or scratching at the floorboards from below. It was testing my prison, looking for a weakness. I stayed in the middle of the room, my machete held in front of me, my eyes darting from window to door, my body slick with cold sweat. I prayed. I prayed to every god and spirit my mother had taught me about. I prayed to the spirit of the land. I prayed for the sun to rise. And then a new sound. A splintering crash from the back of the house, near the small, covered area where I did my cooking. It had found a weaker spot, a loose board. I heard it thrashing, the sound of its wet organs slapping against the wooden planks. It was trying to force its way up through the floor. I scrambled over, my mind screaming. I could see the floorboards bending upwards, a dark, wet stain spreading from the cracks. I grabbed my heavy wooden pestle, the one used for grinding spices, and I brought it down with all my strength on the bulging planks. "Get out," I screamed, my voice raw with terror and rage. "Get out of my house." I struck the floor again and again, like a madman. A piercing, inhuman shriek came from beneath me, a sound of pure pain and fury. The pressure on the boards relented. I stood there, panting, listening. The wet, dragging sound started again, moving away from the house. I rushed to the window and peered out. The red light was retreating, moving quickly back across the rice paddies, heading towards the dark line of trees on the horizon. It was leaving. I watched until the light was just a faint pinprick, and then vanished. I waited. I didn't believe it was over, but as the first, faint hint of gray began to lighten the eastern sky, I knew I had survived. The sun was coming. When the full light of dawn finally flooded my home, I collapsed onto the floor, the machete slipping from my numb fingers. I had survived the night. The next day, I was a ghost. I walked through the village in a daze. The world looked the same, but it felt different, thinner. I knew what lurked just beneath the surface. I saw Bong Tom, and he just gave me a long, solemn look and nodded as if to say, "I know." My first thought was to go to Yi Sathya, to thank her, to ask her what to do next. I knew the Krasue would be back. It was angry now. It would not be deterred by thorns again. I walked the familiar path to her house at the edge of the village. The gate was slightly ajar. "Yi Sathya," I called out. No answer. A strange feeling of unease settled over me. The air was still thick with the smell of her herbs and incense, but something was wrong. I pushed the gate open and walked into her small yard. The pots of herbs were undisturbed. The strange roots were still drying in the sun. "Yi," I called again, louder this time as I approached the door to her small house. It was closed but not latched. I pushed it open. The room was dark and smelled faintly of vinegar, a folk remedy used to clean wounds, and something else, that faint, coppery smell of blood and rot. My eyes adjusted to the gloom. Yi Sathya was there. She was lying on her sleeping mat on the floor. At first, I thought she was sleeping. "Yi," I whispered, taking a step inside. And then I saw it. Around her neck, hidden in the folds of her simple blouse, was a dark red line, a raw, chafed mark like a rope burn, as if something had been forcibly torn away and then messily reattached. On the floor next to her mat was a small, discarded cloth. It was stained with mud and a dark, slimy substance, the same slime I had found smeared on the outside of my house. The world tilted on its axis. My blood turned to ice in my veins. Yi Sathya, the one who had warned me, the one who had told me the stories, the one who knew exactly what the Krasue feared. She hadn't been warning me. She had been studying me, sizing up her prey. Her eyes fluttered open. They were no longer cloudy with age. They were sharp and black and filled with a cold, soulless intelligence. The same eyes I had seen floating outside my window. A slow, horrifying smile spread across her wrinkled face. "The thorns were a clever idea, Kale," she rasped, her voice a dry, familiar whisper. "But a hungry woman always finds a way to eat." I backed away, stumbling out of the house, my mind screaming. I ran. I ran harder and faster than I had run from the light in the paddy. I didn't stop until I was back in my own home, the door bolted, my body shaking with a terror so profound it felt like it was dissolving my bones. That was yesterday. The sun is setting again now. The sky is turning from orange to a deep, bruised purple. The chorus of the frogs is beginning its nightly song, but I know it won't last. Soon the silence will come, and with the silence the red light will return. It knows where I live. It knows who I am. And this time it knows I have seen its true face. The face of my neighbor, my advisor, my hunter. I have nowhere to run. Who would believe me? I am just a farmer, alone in a house on stilts, surrounded by a sea of dark water. My name is Kale, and I am waiting for the night to fall. So if you ever find yourself on a lonely path in the Cambodian countryside, when the moon is high and the air is thick, and you are surrounded by the song of the night, listen carefully. If that song suddenly stops, do not look for the source of the red light you will inevitably see bobbing over the water. Do not look at its reflection. Do not be curious. Turn around and run. Pray you are faster than a hungry woman's curse.